In this video, I'm going to walk through the daily device calibration. So we call it the daily calibration. Really, you want to, if you're using a reflectometer in the field, you do want to calibrate it, pretty much every new day that you're using the device. Um, that's primarily to make sure that the LEDs in the device don't drift over time, go up or down, so that you get kind of consistent readings. But you also there may be situations where you have to calibrate the device multiple times. If you start in the morning and it's cool, maybe cool, moist, and then you're working, and then you pause for lunch and you come back after lunch. Maybe you've traveled the distance. Right now, the weather conditions are different. It's hotter, it's drier. Then you may need to recalibrate a second time in an individual day because the inherent weather conditions have changed. So I'm going to walk through the calibration. I'm going to use the reflectometer training survey, which there's a link available in the meter documentation on the Our Sci website, or depending on the project you're working with, the actual infield surveys that you're using probably have the calibration process embedded in the survey, and you can choose to skip it if you've already calibrated within the last, few hours. So I'm going to open up the reflectometer training survey. And this is just going to give us some information, right? So it's a little information about our reflectometer and the Bluetooth connection, which I shared how to create that Bluetooth connection in a previous video. Downloading the SurveyStat Kit app again, which I've previously covered. We do need to turn on the reflectometer again because it had been off. So that step is complete. We've already paired it, so we'll skip through this. So now we are going to calibrate the device. We are going to select no, which basically to this question, and this is probably the question you'll see in one of your surveys if you use the calibration question set from SurveyStack is, have you calibrated the device in the past 4 hours, or has the weather changed? So we want to calibrate the device, so we will hit no, and that will queue up the calibration process. The first step is always to make sure that the optics are clean. If you've been in the field or if you've been working with quite a few soils, sometimes dust can build up on the optics, and you just want to lightly clean it to make sure that that doesn't impact the calibration. So now the first step is to warm up the device. That's just to get the LEDs firing. So we're not trying to calibrate a cold device that might throw off the calibration. So we will hit run warm up. All right. Sorry, I hadn't used run a measurement since I uploaded the SurveyStat Kit app. So I'm going to connect to the device. My device ID, according to the tag, is 527. So I'm going to connect. And now that I am connected, I can hit back and run measurement. And now you can see that the LEDs are firing and a measurement is taking place. So we'll let that run a second. Now that that's done, we're not worried about any specific things with the measurement. If you see an error here, sometimes that could be because the device hasn't been used in a while. So, one of the device measurements might be off. You can either try to redo and see if that error persists, or going all the way through the calibration process and recalibrating the LEDs may actually clear the error. A common error might be that LED 850 is too noisy or something to that effect. So often either redoing a measurement or finishing the calibration will then resolve that error. So now we're going to hit next, and we're going to do the open blank calibration. And so what we're really trying to accomplish with this daily calibration process is we're trying to set the reflectance measurement range from 0, which is the lowest possible reflection, up to 10,000, which is the highest possible reflection. And so this open blank, you open the clamp, and then usually there's a little gap there where you can lock the clamp open. It says open. Point it into a space and then run the calibration. So what we're doing is trying to point it in an area where there's no reflective surfaces, no computer monitors, no mirrors, no glass, things like that. So just kind of point it out into an open area and fire the LEDs, and then you get very little reflectance back. One thing that's important to note, the LEDs, we pulse them. So they're, flash, flash, flash. That allows us to, within the software, filter out any ambient light that isn't pulsed. So the overhead ceiling above me, the daylight from the window that's next to me. If you're out in the field and it's a sunny day, the fact that there's sunshine where you're calibrating the device shouldn't matter because we're filtering out that ambient light and only measuring the pulsed lights from the LED. So the next step is so we collected this minimum reflectance data by firing the LEDs into an open space. Now we need to send that data to the device so that it's stored locally. And now we need to calibrate our maximum reflectance. And so your reflectometer should have this little white calibration stick here. So you want to insert that. And then you want to make sure that it's lined up so it's flush, right? You don't want it being like this or over or whatever. So it's like as flush as possible over those optics. Now I will set that down gently and I will run this calibration. So this, by flashing it against that flush white surface, we're getting what you could consider the maximum reflectance value. This is that 10,000 range that I talked about. So we're going to send that data to the device as well. And now we're going to do a quality check. So you want to keep the calibration cuvette exactly as is, so don't move it. And then we're going to run the QC check, which is going to flash lights again, and then we're going to see how well the calibration worked. So we have this, green success, no errors. That's good. Now by hitting done, we can see this is what's really important. If I scroll up here, you can see for each of the 10 wavelengths, you can see, the result and then the manufacturer calibration. So the result would mean from this QC scan, the manufacturer would be the calibration from the blank that we just did. And then you can see this percent offset. So what we really want to see is that our offset is less than 1 or 2%, right? So here you can see the 365 offset is, negative 0.41%. That's fantastic, right? The 880 is negative 0.09%. So that's fantastic. So you see these, that means our calibration was a success. We can hit next, and then we can perform our scans. One note, if you do run into errors during the calibration process, usually it's that maybe an individual LED was too noisy or that the percent offset that I just mentioned was too large. The first step in troubleshooting that is to just go through the full calibration process again. So go back, redo the open blank. Again, be very, very mindful of the surroundings. Make sure that the clamp is open, that the device is is pointed in an area with no reflective surfaces that are going to reflect light back to the sensors. When you do the closed calibration again, make sure that this is seated properly. And then when you do the QC, make sure that this cuvette is still in the cuvette holder and still flush. One of the most common errors is that people pull that calibration cuvette out and then they run the QC and then they get crazy numbers because now they're measuring the back of the cuvette holder as opposed to the calibration stick, which is what is being compared.